Since GEFPV made the GE220, if this had a little brother, would it be the ZX5? Today we're going to be taking a look at this GEPRC GEP-ZX5, and this means because it's 5-inch propellers, I hope, and it's a 190mm size frame, so it's a little bit smaller than the 210 size frames that I've been flying, like the LS210. But because it's the next frame, I got my GE220 here to compare it against, and because it's a 190, I got this Tyrant 180 to compare it with, and this should be a little bit bigger motor span than this. Well, anyway, I think GEPRC is really trying to step up their game, and this actually came in this plastic sealed box, which was pretty cool. The box is nothing special, you just got a big sticker on it, but the fact that it's wrapped in plastic is kind of cool. Anyway, let me get this opened up and we'll take a little closer look at the parts inside. Here I got the wrap off. Let's go ahead and open this up and take a look at what's inside. Comes with instructions, which, like I've said before, is actually a pretty good plus. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's a good plus to have it in this one because this looks like a lot of parts. So here we go, we got some goodies. Oh, and it has the spacers on here that have the little grooves on them so you can actually grip them with your fingers. That's good. Power wire, a power distribution board, and this looks like it has the 5-volt output on this side and a 12-volt output. We'll take a little closer look at that. The battery strap has this little piece that goes up on top so that you don't have to hold the nuts still on top while you're screwing it together. Bag full of screws, camera mount. It has a carbon fiber one and a little metal one in there. Plates and arms. Let me get these arms open and we'll take a little closer look. Holy mackerel, I think I have... Oh good, it has 4. I thought, man, these things are thick, and I thought maybe there's 3 or 4 in here, but no, there's only 2. Let me get this stuff open. So here are all the parts laid out, and this is the first kit I've actually got that came with these grooved spacers on here. They're pretty neat. It's also the first one I've seen that came with this AMAS XT60, what's it called, some kind of connector, XT60 Plus connector, where it has the XT60 plus this little thing up here on top, just to make it look cooler and hold the wires apart so you don't have to heat shrink it. But it's still just an XT60 connector, and it's compatible with all the other ones. But it also has this piece here, and this is an aluminum piece so that you can put screws into it without having to hold it still up on top of the board, which should make the assembly a little bit easier. So here's one of the arms, and let's see if I can get a measurement on this. It comes in about 4 millimeters. So these arms are 4 millimeters, and these main plates here, there's 2 plates that are kind of the main plates. They're both 2 millimeter plates. These are all the same. These are the 2 main plates. This one goes on the bottom. This one is held up a little bit off the bottom, and these 2, I think, attached to this one. Anyway, I'll start putting this together and we'll see how it looks. So here's what it looks like so far. Each of these arms has 3 screws that hold it in. This outer one here and the inner one are both 6 millimeters, where this one here I think is a 10 millimeter screw, and you'll see here in just a second. And then over here on the side it has 2 screws in the back and 2 screws in the front, and here you can see the battery strap holes. But up here on this side, it has the aluminum spacer, and the little short ones, like I said, are this one that's a little bit closer to the middle here, and this one are both the 6 millimeter screws all the way around, and this one's a little bit longer, and you can kind of see it there. And the reason for that is because that is where your power distribution board sits. But you have to put these little nylon spacers in there because you don't want anything shorting out to this aluminum plate. So here's the power distribution board. It just slips in there like that, and that gives you a place to where it won't short out. Now there aren't many threads sticking up above there, but it shouldn't be too big of an issue because it only has a little spacers left, and then your flight board goes on top of that. But here, I'll go ahead and finish this up and we'll see how it looks. So here's what it looks like fully assembled. And this top plate, if you can see here, it kind of pushes down in 2 spots, right here and right here into this middle plate, and then this other screw holds it down kind of Krieger style. And I only had one little problem, and that was that one of these rear places here, the tolerances were real small. I had to take a little utility knife, scratch out a little bit of carbon fiber out of this plate, and then it slipped down in there enough that I could actually get it started. Now it also has these 2 little antenna looking things back here on the back, and I'm not really sure what those are for, except for maybe to hold a camera into place up on the top, which I guess that could be what it's for. And it has these slots here, which again I would also expect would be for battery strap holding the camera in place. Also down here in the lower section, you can see how tight it is in here. Now you aren't going to be able to have a flight board with pins on here, so you got to either de-pin your flight board or get something like an SP3 Racing where it doesn't come with any pins on it, because you can see here it has that little nylon nut there, and it is at the top of the screw. Now I lost one of my nylon nuts because it fell on the ground and I just gave up looking for it. I have some other ones inside. I'd rather just use one of those rather than waste a lot of time looking for this. The flight board or the power distribution board is right here, and the only downside of this is that there's no room under the power distribution board because you got that aluminum spacer inside there, which did make things a lot nicer when it came to putting the bottom plate together. The downside of all this is that your video transmitter and your video or your control receiver are both going to have to go up in this upper housing up here, and it's not too big of a deal, except for this is the camera here. You can kind of see the mount here on the front, and it has a screw here and a screw here, and this one loosens, and then the camera can tilt a little bit. Let me get a level. Can tilt a little bit forward or tilt backward, or straight, so that you can, as you're flying forward, you can see a little better. Anyway, the only thing is that if you fly with this thing pretty straight, you're limiting how much space is still in here available for your video transmitter and your control receiver. So this is going to be a tight build if you try to put all that stuff inside there. Now you do have all this room on the main plate right here, but you can't really cover up that hole inside there because that's where the wires, I would expect, are supposed to come up through there rather than run them outside of around the side of the frame where they would have more of a potential to get caught in the propellers. So it's, like I said, it's going to be a little bit more of a tight build inside there, but you do have the room. It's just a matter of getting it all in there and figuring out how you're going to lay it all out. So how much space exactly is inside here? Well, let's take a look. Here we're going to get the caliper set in here, and we have about 29.7 millimeters wide inside there. And inside back here behind, from the plate to the spacer, we have about 19 millimeters. And that's this space here from the spacer to there. Of course, if you get inside, you'll have a little bit more, but I wouldn't count on a lot more. Now, like I said, I think these holes on the top are for a battery strap to hold on your camera, or a camera strap, whatever you're using. So you may not want to use something underneath there. You may not want to put your receiver underneath there for your control or your video transmitter. But it also has these little holes over here on the side, which they run underneath this plate here. And so if you're using something like a run cam or something, you can use these side holes and run the camera strap around this direction. So it's kind of nice because you can use these for a GoPro or the side ones for a run cam or a Mobius. But like I said, because if you do run those in there, you really can't have anything mounted to that top plate on the inside, which just means you're limiting your room inside there. So I'm not really sure what to think. Also, if you look here, it has these 3 holes, and those 3 holes are there for your HS1177 type of camera. So you can put it inside there and it can twist on its own rather than use the built-in camera mount that it came with. So here's the quadcopter fully assembled, and it comes in about 114.6 grams. Now that's not including the XT60 adapter. If I throw this on here without making it fall, let's see what it comes out to. 120.1, so a little bit more with the XT60 connector, but not much. So let's go ahead and measure up these motor spacing. If I get that centered pretty close there, and I come over here to this side, look at that, 190. So calling this a 190 is actually very accurate. That's good for GEFPV. So here on the arm, you can see it has the big hole in the center, and that's always for the motor shaft. And then these little pieces coming off of there are for 1806 motors or 1306 motors if you want to run the little bit smaller size. These little holes that are out here by themselves are for your 2200 size motors, so this can use either one. Of course, it looks like they prefer the 2200 because the wires will then come straight down the arm. If you use an 1806, they're either going to come out this way or this way, and then you have to reroute them down the arm. So 2200 is probably the right size to use. Here's a 5045 dowel prop tri-blade, and if I center this over the hole, you can see that it can spin past the center. Well, let me move it a little bit. There you go. If I center this over the hole, you can see it's going to spin past the middle okay. which is good, but that's also why it's going to be real close. But that's why I was saying, if you're going to run wires from the bottom power distribution board or your flight controller up to the upper part up here in the top, you're going to want to go through that inside hole, because you don't want this propeller swinging by and chopping anything up. Now the nice thing about having a 5-inch propeller on something like this, this size, is first of all, this being an X frame like this, it doesn't have a lot of wind resistance other than the arms themselves and a little square small body that's you know, dragging through the wind, as compared to something like the QAVR, where that has a extended body up to the front and a little bit more extended body to the back. It's just carrying a little bit more material through the air, that's just all creating less drag, which is one reason these X frames are getting kind of popular now. So here's the Rodeo 150 and the ZX5, and you can see the front motors are almost the same width apart. The ZX5 does have a little bit wider you know, left to right motor, but if you look at the back here, it's a lot longer from front to back than the Rodeo 150, and that's how it's actually getting a lot of its extra length, I think. So here's the ZX5 next to my GE220, and I don't know if you can really tell, but these motors here are a little bit longer than the motors over here. And it should be. This is a 190 and this is a 220. So this is actually 30 millimeters longer from motor to motor than this one is. So here's the ZX5 sitting next to the Tyrant 180. Now one advantage that this has over the Tyrant is the Tyrant can only run 4-inch propellers. Now if you only want to run 4-inch propellers, this one will run 4-inch propellers and it'll probably be fine. But since it can run 5-inch propellers, you could put some 5-inch on here with something like some 2700 kV motors, or maybe some red bottom, what are they, 2500 I think, or 2600, whatever they are. Put some of those motors on here with some 5-inch propellers, and this thing's going to scream. There's not a lot of drag, like I was saying, because of its small size, but you are going to have very small tolerances between the propellers and the body. One other thing I almost failed to mention on this. See how this is pointing here, so it's an X frame? Well, this whole top piece here can be turned 45 degrees to make it into a T-shaped quadcopter. And essentially what happens is that these two posts here move over to these two holes here, and the two back ones move over to these two, and your flight board mounts into these 4 holes there. I was kind of wondering what those holes were there for in the first place. But if you wanted to make it into a T-copter, you could actually turn this, like I said, about, what's that, 45 degrees, and it would be a T-copter. So this is the GEP-ZX5 quadcopter. This came from Banggood, and I'll have some links to this down in the description if you're interested in picking one of these up for yourself. Now I think this is, with these 4mm arms, this thing is going to be a tough one to break also. And having the 3 screws in each arm is going to make it tough to break. Some advantages this has is these arms are a little bit skinnier, which is kind of a disadvantage in a crash scenario, but it's an advantage in that there's not a lot of wind for the propellers to push air past, just because they're a little bit thinner. So if you're up for a good challenge of wiring and getting all your stuff to cram up inside this compartment up here at the top, this quadcopter is going to be a lot of fun for you. Anyway, this is the GEP's ZX5 inch. This is also available, I think, in a 6-inch and maybe even a 4-inch. I can't remember, but I'll have links to those in the description if you're interested. Anyway, if you have any questions about this, please leave in the comments, and I'll try to help you out as best I can. And as always, thanks for watching.